Okay, sorry about that. So the last minute add on. Okay, can you guys hear me? And I'm sorry that my back is going to be to you. That's not my intent. The cord isn't long enough to come off the table here. So so most people want to know what is a PCP? What am I supposed to do? Why am I here? And so what I did back in 2021 was took our old PCP manual and rewrote it completely. And this is parts of that. And it was not as complete as I thought it was to be able just to send you guys a complete electronic copy. And plus I want to switch over to a lot of the things that Wyoming has going on. And I didn't realize that Wyoming has, their setup is quite a bit different, their structure quite a bit different than ours. So I couldn't just go change the word Wyoming to Oregon and say go. And when I went and read it the first time, it didn't really register until I went back through it. And it was like, oh, well, this isn't going to work either. So I'm taking what I feel is the most important for training number one from the manual that I revamped in 2021. There may be a couple of errors in here on the dates, but we'll get that corrected. And so by the next meeting, you'll have your complete, edited, correct manual. That'll be emailed to you and you can print it out if you want a hard copy or use it electronically. And anybody that doesn't have the ability to get it printed, let me know and we'll get you a hard copy for that. So, the Republican Party itself, we're a group with a common interest and common beliefs. And the whole reason for the party is to move those beliefs forward. And part of those beliefs is retaining the republic that we are and being a constitutional republic. And so that is the basis for the belief of the Republican Party. And then we move that forward with our actions. And so the Constitution is supposed to guarantee that our rights and freedoms are protected and not lost to the bureaucracy of government. But we all know that our freedoms are only as good as we are willing to protect them ourselves. And if we sit back and think that the government is going to protect our rights, we're wrong. And so that is another one of our common interests, is to protect our God-given rights so that the government doesn't take them away. And a lot of times people have a misconception that the Constitution gives us rights. It gives us the right to speak freely. It gives us the right to gather. Our rights are given to us by our Creator. The Constitution is to protect our rights. It was written for the people to protect their rights from the government. The Constitution gives you nothing. It is up to us to continue to be we the people to make sure that the government is not stepping around the Constitution and taking our rights away. So it's really important that you understand that it protects us. It does not give us anything. So when you're a PCP, you're elected to serve for your Republican neighbors. So as you all know, that you are elected a PCP to the particular precinct. And there's one PCP. Oh, great. Mike, would you help? Would you get the power cord out of that bag, please? I thought it would last longer than that. It should be in there. The small pocket on, yeah. No, the next one up maybe. Yeah, no, there's the next pocket up. The middle pocket. The other one, the other left.
It's like you're looking in a woman's purse. You don't know what you're gonna find.
Now we'll we have a place to plug it in without having to crawl under the table. Oh, last time I think oh, does it reach there? Okay, perfect. Thank you. So, so when you signed up to be a PCP, we put down your precinct. We tried to put people in the precinct in which they live. So PCPs are determined on the amount of people that live in that precinct. One PCP for each 250 registered voters in that district. So there's always a minimum of 2 per precinct. So like where I am from out in precinct 9, there is only 2 PCPs. Then when you get to precinct 17, which is up Juniper Canyon, they have 14 PCPs because there's more population up there. Down in Prineville Central, the PCPs are a smaller geographical area. So some have 2, some have 6, some have 8. So they're only allowed that many PCPs as what is designated based on population. So if your precinct was full, then I put you in another precinct. And it really doesn't matter. You can still work with the people that are PCPs in your precinct and work around your home, or you can work the one that you're assigned with, or you can have the buddy system where, you know, maybe you want to go work a particular area that you know more people in, or maybe the area you grew up in, or whatever. You're not, excuse me, you're not locked in to that area, but it is important that we communicate so that we're not doubling up on the same areas when you do decide to go out and do some canvassing or some calling. So we're always going to have to be talking to each other on what areas are being addressed and who's doing what, which is why I give you the list. So when I send out the email today, I purposely did not blind carbon copy. I put it up in the tube so everybody has everybody's email address. And then I give you emailed you the hard copy today. It's the last page in the handout. That's everybody's name, address, and phone number. Please keep that amongst us. This isn't for your Boy Scouts fundraiser. It's not for, yeah. Please honor the privacy and keep it with just us PCPs. But it's important that we be able to communicate. And so that's why I give that to you. So then you represent, as a PCP, you represent the Republicans in your precinct. You are their voice. And one of the things that hasn't been happening so much statewide mostly is that we've fallen down on getting to know our neighbors, our neighborhood, and our community. We don't do backyard barbecues like we used to. We don't have the community halls where we all used to meet. We don't, you know, Post used to have a Grange where they had dances every single weekend. They had a community Thanksgiving together at the Grange Hall. Same thing up at Paulina. And what was the Grange called out your way, Ron? Lookout Mountain Grange. Same thing. All the community used to come together all the time. And it was kind of like, well, you know, you're from a small town because you know what everybody's doing. You know when the baby was born, you knew when grandpa passed away. You knew who bought a new vehicle, you knew whose tractor broke down. You knew what was going on, but you also knew where your neighbors were coming from. And that's a loss. That's lost amongst us. And I'm not saying that as a criticism, I'm saying it as a fact. And one of the things that we have to get back to is knowing our neighbors and being able to talk to them. And one of my sayings is the demise of America is the lack of talking about religion and politics. And we need to get back to that. We need to not be fearful of talking to people about that. One thing that I know a lot of you in here noticed, and Bill brought it up to me, is a lot of you were new to Crook County or new to the precinct. A lot of you, I put you in a precinct that you don't know even where the precinct was. And was anybody astonished that they received 175 votes? 200 and some votes. Sally was worried we put her in a different one, and she got almost as many votes as Mike and Teresa that have been in that precinct for years, because we have uninformed voters. Your name was on the ballot and they marked the box. And we need to get back to informing our voters. We need to connect with our neighbors. We need to know where they're coming from. We need to know what we do well enough to let them know. We need to let them know that the Constitution doesn't give them rights. You already have them. It's up to you to get out and help protect them. So we have to do a better job of connecting. And I say that we all have to be able to talk to our neighbors better so that we can educate them. So when elections come up, we can let them know the difference between two candidates and why one would be better than another. Now, in the ORP manual that they sent out, they said in the primary, you're not supposed to endorse as a PCP a candidate, and that is wrong. One of the ways that we want to look at a candidate is against our platform. And the very, the last page was the summary. I did not print a hard copy of the contact list. The very last page is a summary of our ORP platform and our beliefs and what we stand for. And when we look at a candidate, the first thing that we need to do is say, how do they align with our platform? Do they support the Constitution? So if somebody is for gun control, does that support the Constitution? No. So would that person pass the plank? Okay, so then if that same person doesn't support free market capitalism, that they want a one payer provider for medical care, they don't want Blue Cross Blue Shield to be able to sell it to you, or Pacific Source, they want a one source provider. If they believe that, do they align with our platform? No. And we go down the list. So we look at each candidate and we say, do they align with our beliefs? Are they a Republican? And what's the other word we call them if they're not? I know. Republican in name only, which means they go register to be a Republican, and then they go do whatever it is they want to do. And the reason Oregon keeps losing and not having Republicans elected is because we are getting too many candidates that leave the primary and they didn't pass enough of these planks to be a Republican. So we have rhinos going forward. And a lot of the people that have changed from Republican to non-affiliated voter are disgruntled Republicans. So because there's too many rhinos going forward, they're not staunch enough Republicans for them. So it behooves us to know our platform and then look at our candidates and discern whether or not they are a Republican. And how many of these can you live with if they fail? Or how many do they have to pass? And everybody's going to have their own standards. I myself go down to, well, it's under family is where they put traditional family ordained by God. And in that plank is where, you know, if you're pro-life or pro-choice. And so for me, that plank has to be passed. They have to be pro-life to even be considered for me. Now, that doesn't mean that that's the one that's for you. Maybe it's the economy, maybe you're a logger and it's the natural resources and they need to be able to utilize natural resources. Everybody's gonna have their own priority list on what discerns on making that candidate pass or not. You need to know that about each candidate so that when you go out and you meet your neighbors and your neighbor says, so who are you gonna vote for governor? And don't ask me who I voted for governor. My gosh, got bit on that one, but I could have had a VA. So, but you need to know, you need to be able to say, yes, this person is solid. I've looked at their stance. I've looked at their voting record. I've looked at their website. Everything says, yes, they are a good, solid candidate. Or, oh boy, you know, I looked at them and gosh, I can't really even tell where they would be a Republican. They don't align with our platform at all. And so we need to be able to tell that to people, not just, well, I like the way he talks. I like how she dresses, or I don't like how she dresses. None of that matters. It needs to be back to our platform and how do they align with our beliefs? And are they a good, solid Republican to go forward from the primary to the general? And I know this is a little bit of after the fact, but it's kind of how the cookies fell this time. So thinking about that moving forward, we need to be able to discern the good and the bad on these candidates on how they align with our platform. And then, of course, you can always bring in the idiosyncrasies that you just can't live with. I mean, if it's somebody that, you know, smokes cigars and you can't live with that, then obviously then, you know, that's going to not be a deal breaker for you. But, and you can articulate that to somebody else, that's fine. But as a PCP, as a Republican PCP, we need to look at how these candidates line up to our platform. It talks about there's no one way to do it. You know, everybody's gonna have their own idea of what a PCP is and how you're gonna do it. You know, some people like knocking on doors, some people would rather make phone calls, somebody might want to cookie social, somebody might want to just sit and do the paperwork and help create the maps and the lists that the rest of the PCPs need. You can be really flexible. You can do as much as you want or as little as you want. That's not going to be held against you, but our success will be measured by the amount of people that we can actually reach out to. There's a page there that just kind of tells you who's who. Mike is our chair. I'm vice chair. Francis, our treasurer. Ray Sessler's not here. He's our first delegate, and we'll talk about this in a little bit on how this all comes into play. Ron Sholin's our alternate delegate. Bonnie's our other alternate, and then Dale Color's our final. And then all that's self-explanatory. So we get into the party structure. So it starts with the registered party voter. So you start out with each individual registered Republican as a voter. That's the Republican base. Those are the people that we represent. And then you move forward and choose to become a PCP. Now you are the official representative to those Republican voters within your precinct. It's the smallest geographical division for the political party organization. It's the actual smallest form of government is your precinct. And back in 2012, when I was running for county commissioner, one of my slogans was, is the only way that we're gonna take our county, our country back is from the ground level up. We've got to get to the smallest form, the smallest area, and win it and move up from there. And that's what we are as PCPs. We win our precinct. We win that precinct over, and then we can move up to a county level and win the whole county together. And then the counties can join and take back the state. But it starts in your backyard. It starts with your neighbors. It starts in your precinct. You get elected for a 2-year term, and there is no term limit, so you can up as long as you want. And it's interesting. There are people that are PCPs that have been for a lot of years that are in their 80s and 90s and have never attended a meeting. Now, we don't have any of those here in Crook County, but going through the PCPs of other counties, we have numerous across the state. Somewhere along the line, it was instilled to them to be a PCP, and they go in and fill out the form and become elected every single year and have never gone to a Republican meeting. So we're not going to let that happen in Crook County. I'll harass you. And then we can also appoint from the central committee like we did tonight when we appointed John, and then we'll appoint Ted when he comes back, and anybody else that up to 8 more people that want to participate. Then we're divided up into congressional districts. So the Oregon Republican Party, first of all, has their registered voters. Then they have their PCPs within the county. Then that creates the County Central Committee, which is what we are here. We're the Crook County Republican Central Committee. That's our official title. And then from there, there's one more level across the state, and it's congressional districts. So we're in the 2nd congressional district here. So we have a chair and an alternate chair, a vice chair and an alternate vice chair. And then there's their secretary and treasurer for their officers. And when we go to state Republican meetings, they are part of the voting body. And those, the chair and vice chair are also part of the state executive committee. So our delegates that move out of the central committee here, so currently that's Mike and I and Ray Sessler, and when he's not available, then Ron has been filling in for us, and Dale Keller and Bonnie, they fill in if we're not available. Those are the votes, the voting people that go forward to vote on these congressional district officers. And it's very important because as a county chair, Mike doesn't have a say on the executive committee, but who we vote in for the 2nd congressional district does. And so it's really important because what? Because voting counts, voting matters. Votes always matter on who you elect. And so it's really important as we move forward, as you guys learn the process and the structure, that everybody become aware of what's going on. It would be my hope that somebody from this group would want to move forward and be part of that 2nd congressional district to give Crook County a voice in the state executive committee and what happens statewide, in addition to the delegates that come out of this county. So something to think about as we move forward. There's a whole other layer. And then of course there's the state party, which has its officers, but then we have a national committee man and a national committee woman, and they go forward to the RNC, to the national conventions and the national business. There are representatives to go forward to that. And then the national party. And the little puzzle pieces kind of show what I just said, how that all comes into play. Does anybody have any questions on that? So in November is when we, what's called our reorganization or organization meeting. In November, we'll have a meeting where the PCPs will then elect the chair, the vice chair, the secretary and treasurer, and the delegates to go forward for the next 2 years. So that's something for you guys to be thinking about. If anybody wants to be vice chair, I will welcome you to that position. And I can step back, but we have to keep Mike as chair. So, but be thinking about that if you want to be involved. So like right now, we still need a secretary, but then we're going to need to elect one in November. If we fail to organize, then the state chairman, which is Herman Barscheider, he can appoint. So it's important, we won't fail, but that's the process. If a county fails right now, Wheeler County is not organized, and he's looking at appointing so that Wheeler County would be organized. And he can appoint any willing Republican. They don't have to be a PCP at that point if they didn't organize up there. Okay, we kind of already talked about a lot of this stuff. You're the boots on the ground. Have to be 18 years of age and have been a Republican in Oregon for 180 days. The only difference between an elected PCP and an appointed PCP is come November when we have that organization meeting, an appointed PCP cannot vote on who they want as officers. It'll only be the elected ones. All this stuff is self-explanatory. It's what we just went through with all the SEL 105 forms, and those of you that did the declaration to be a write-in. This kind of goes back over a little bit about what we already talked about, responsibilities. You're the eyes, the ears, and the voice of the party. All of the registered voters in your precinct, you have the greatest influence on the result of the election. So if you have credentialed a candidate, then your voice has weight when you go out into your community and say, this candidate's good for these reasons, or this candidate doesn't really align.
Are the names of the Republicans that are available to us?
Yes, I can print out, and I'm sorry I didn't give you that list earlier, but yes, I can print out lists of all registered Republicans within your precinct.
What about the non-affiliated?
And I can do anything. I can do all parties. So one of the things that, and I'm sorry if I jump around, if I'm losing you guys, but you bring up a good point on the NAVs or segue into what I'd like to say about NAVs. I know there's this big push to get NAVs registered as Republicans, but we have to share the same beliefs. They have to align with that platform, just like our candidates do. If we are taking warm Republicans and registering them Republicans, we're going to get warm or cool candidates coming out. So we want to change those NAVs that align with our platform to be Republican. We don't want to just register everybody Republican, because then we get to the point where who are they choosing for their primary person going forward? We're diluting the party if we are just wanting everybody to come in. So, and I'm not saying that in an unwelcoming tone. I'm saying that from a fact. when you're talking to somebody and you're like, wow, we really think a lot alike. We really align in our way of thinking. Gosh, why aren't you a Republican? You should be a Republican. That's solid. But if you're just trying to say, well, you don't want to be one of them on the other side, come register with us. Well, if they don't think like us, they're not going to vote like us, and they're not going to put forward a solid Republican candidate out of the primaries. So think about that. Ask people what their beliefs are. Do they align enough to choose a candidate that's going to align with our platform? Because I think that's where we've lost a lot of our base to the NAVs because we're not staunch enough, and because we're not being picky in the primaries, a lot of people can come in to the primary register as a Republican and come in and not get any pushback because we're not pushing back in the primaries. And once they get to the general, it's too late. A few hours a month is all it takes to create a strong precinct. These few hours will help you build a rapport with registered Republicans within your precinct so that they will recognize you as their contact person on political issues and candidates. So friendly access to neighbors. Most people are eager to know about their government and the people who run it. And sometimes we don't always even have to talk about whether or not we're a Republican. We can talk about what's going on in our county or our city. We can talk about what the county is doing with new data centers. We can talk about what the county's doing with new destination resorts. We can talk about those things with our neighbors. And when you start those conversations, then you're gonna get a feel for how they align. And another thing that's available to you is if anybody wants to know how somebody's registered, if you have a neighbor and you want to know, let me know and I can look them up for you. And we can print out entire lists of precincts so you can look somebody up and see how they're registered if you question. If you can't get that information or you want to know ahead of time, we can look that up for you and let you know where they're coming from. Because you can be neighbors for years, and unless you discuss politics, you may not have any idea how they're registered. And so, and another thing is older people that are Democrat. The old Democrats are a lot different than the New Day progressives. And so a lot of like my folks' era that were Democrats would be a pretty solid Republican today. And so be really careful that you don't call names, don't use libtard or Democrats or all the fun names, because we're trying to reach people. We're trying to educate people to understand, what a constitutional republic is and how the Republican Party aligns to that. And if you turn them off on the first sentence by, making some remark, you've shut the door. And you'll never open that door again if you offend somebody. So we really need to be careful on what we call them, because yes, there are some that just need to be called evil libertards, whatever. But we need to change our way of thinking and get to know that person and how they align, and then be able to say, do you really, the party you're in, is it really supporting your way of thinking, or do you think the Republicans, do you align better with them? So don't offend people, get to know them. Don't be afraid to talk about politics to your neighbors. Respect from the elected officials. So when they find out that you're elected, there's kind of this automatic respect because you've been elected by the people. So when you tell somebody you're an elected, you're a PCP, then automatically you have a voice where you may not have before, because there's a certain amount of respect that comes with an elected position. Again, not as many in today's world as it used to be, but nevertheless, there's still that respect. So when somebody finds out you're a PCP, that opens a door for them to listen to you out of respect. So don't nullify that by calling them a libetard.
You keep saying.
Good advice.
And it's a launching pad for other offices. So as a PCP, and you get involved and you really understand how the government works and how the government's working against we the people, then it causes more people to rise up and run for these offices to try to correct some of those wrongs. So so that it's kind of a stepping stone. Like when Amber Richardson was here and I questioned her on whether or not she was a PCP, because I had just gone through 2,500 PCPs and I knew her name wasn't on the list, and she said yes she was. Well, she had been an appointed PCP, she wasn't an elected PCP, which is neither here nor there. It's just I didn't recognize her name on the list, but she was. And so a lot of the candidates are learning that if they want to have the support of the central committees, they better be part of them to begin with. Because how many candidates how many elected officials in Crook County right now are Republicans? Can anybody name any of them off? Jerry Brummer, Seth Crawford, Brian Barney, Cheryl Seeley, Wade Whiting, Vicky Breeze Iverson. How many of them attend the meetings regularly? How many of them are going to want our support when they go to rerun? Vicky does attend regularly until she got House Minority Leader. She was coming quite often, her and Brian. So I will give her that. We have had Seth here. They've all been here from time to time, but they don't regularly attend.
So a lot of those positions are called nonpartisan. Are there any rules, or should they attend one? Should they attend the other?
There's not, so the definition of nonpartisan means that the office does not get selected between either a Republican or a Democrat, like we just did in the primary. Those are partisan office for the governor. That's a partisan office. So the Republicans choose their candidate, the Democrats choose their candidate, and then we vote on one. 3 this year, but nevertheless. In a nonpartisan, it just means that they're not going to have to go through the primary. It's the one that gets the most, 51% of the vote, over 50% of the vote wins. It doesn't matter which party they are for that particular office. That doesn't mean that we don't vet those people going forward on where they stand politically. That's up to us. That's on us as voters, to be educated voters, not to just mark the box because they're on the ballot, but to do the research ahead of time. For instance, the Bureau of Labor and Industries that went forward was a nonpartisan office. Yet I went and researched all the candidates to find out what party affiliation they are, because you hope that that gives you some idea of where they stand. But if they have never been vetted against the platform, then it doesn't help us a whole lot. So it doesn't mean that we still can't vet them. It just means that to get that office, it doesn't go through a primary. It's whoever gets the most votes, over 50% of the vote.
So back to Bureau of Labor, so that vote is taken in the general election?
Because no one candidate got more than 50%. The top 2 go to the general.
Okay.
And so the 2 that are going to the general, one is a Democrat and the other one is a Republican that doesn't meet the platform. So Sherry Helt and Stephanie Johnson, yeah, so those two will go forward for the bolded. So our bylaws say that if any Republican holds a countywide or statewide, any Crook County Republican holds a countywide or statewide office, they are automatically a voting member, even though they're not a PCP, a voting member of this central committee. So technically, Seth Crawford holds a countywide position. He has a vote. Brian Barney, Jerry Brummer, Cheryl Seeley, Wade Whiting. And there's others, but they're not coming to me right off the top of my head. So if they walked into the room and wanted to vote in November on who our officers are going to be, they have that standing. Okay, and then the other thing that PCPs do is at the state level, so the PCPs don't have a, when we go to do the platform, they can participate in putting together our platform. And I'll get you a copy of our platform. I don't have it included, I just have the summary. Our platform is 5,430 words long. Wyoming's platform basically has the same stance, basically has all the same planks, basically believes all the same way, and it's like 930 words. So sometimes more is not better. I worked with a candidate in the Willamette Valley, Tracy Kramer for House District 22, and she was going for an endorsement, and I advised her to read over the platform and be prepared to answer questions on how she aligns with the platform because she is Republican. And so the next morning she called me and she's like, oh my gosh, that took so long and I'm not sure that I really even understand it. And there were some things repeated 5 times. And it's like, yeah. So I want you guys, when you get a copy of the platform, to read it and think about it and help us move forward changes to that platform to get rid of the redundancy and to make it concise. Because if we are going to hold candidates to our platform, they need to be able to read it and say, yes, this is me. I agree with this. But if they're going through this going, okay, I believe in natural resources, I believe in cutting timber, but I have, and then this, oh my gosh, does this contradict this or does this part of this? And it's convoluted. It is really hard to understand. And if you read each plank completely by itself, it's not so bad. But if you read the whole thing and try to put the big picture together, it gets pretty convoluted. Because when we do this, we break the groups, the committees up by plank. And so each committee does their own thing, and then we put this big document together. So we really have to look at that, and we'd really like you guys to look at that and be able to offer information back, be part of the process, and help groom that down and cut that down and just make it concise. This is how we believe. Did somebody say something? Yeah.
Where does the platform come from?
So the platform comes from the State Central Committee. They put together committees ahead of time. And so PCPs are the only ones that can, let's see, how did that work? The, we have 3 delegates normally, and for the platform, we get 2 extra. So we had 5 people that could go forward and be part of the platform from Crook County. And we have our set of beliefs, we have the platform, and then there's committees, and you can decide, these delegates that come from every county can decide what committee they want to be on. And every committee is assigned a chair, and I was chairperson of the Natural Resource Committee. And I added a great big long paragraph this time because it was before I knew any better. It was my first time. And so I will confess that I made it longer. But so then what happens is we divide up in these committees. First, we did them by Zoom, and people joined in and made comments, and we took notes, and then we went in person platform committee, and we all sat in a room for each plank and discussed what we wanted to add and delete out of that. And then that committee brought their recommendation forward to the entire central committee, where then they voted on each individual word, basically. Yes. And well, we had some pretty good ones. There was some pretty good ones. So then we bring it together and vote on it as the entire body to bring it forward. And again, this is where, if we just invite anybody into the party, whether they have that same set of beliefs, that's where our platform gets distorted. That's where things get added that shouldn't be in there. One of the things I learned on what I added, you guys can all slap me, I'll take the 20 lashes or whatever. It was more of a compromise paragraph for our legislature to use, obviously in our favor, but it wasn't as solid stand as it could have been. It was more of a, hey, I can work with this in legislature to get things passed our way, but it wasn't as solid and strong as it could have been. So these are all things to think about, and these are all really important things, and it's all overwhelming tonight, I know, because we've talked about a lot of things, but these are the foundation on which we are building our party on. This is the documents that we stand on, and we need to put more thought into that as we move forward. Okay, so you guys want to go to 8:30? Is everybody okay? Want to go a few more minutes? Okay. Am I boring you? A little.
So where do we get the full platform?
I'll email a copy of it out to you. It's also on that page that has the officers on it. Down there is our Oregon website, oregon.gop, takes you to the state, and there's a tab that says get involved, or our party, and the platforms on there. But I'll send you a copy of it.
Like 100 pages long.
What's that?
Is it like 100 pages long?
5,430 words long. It's 17 planks. It's like 15 pages. What, Teresa?
I just read something I haven't ever thought about. I knew how the PCPs had participated. You've explained to us, like, when Mike McLean resigned and then Vicky was chosen, but at the bottom of that where it says PCP attend meetings of the County Republican Central Committee, at the very bottom it says PCPs participate in the replacement of Republican nominees if candidates withdraw after the primary.
Yes.
That's a pretty big deal.
Or if somebody passes away. We've had in the past where candidates were elected and then passed away before the general election. So yes, that is kind of that same process. And every vote counts, and your vote as a PCP counts. And that's really important. Like Teresa brought up, and some of you may not have heard this, but one of the things that the PCPs do is so when Mike McLean was our House District 55 House Representative, got appointed as judge of our circuit court here, he resigned from his House seat. Because he was a Republican, then the Republicans within House District 55 get to put forward 3 to 5 candidates that they would like to replace him. So at the time, it was all of Crook County, a small portion of Deschutes County, a portion of Lake County, a portion of Klamath County, and a portion of Jackson County. And we had the most PCPs, we had the most weight. We put forward 3 of the 5 candidates from this central committee. All of the counties met in a meeting to put forth their nominations. Then those 5 people went before the county commissioners of all those counties. Now it's weighted so that Crook County had the most votes because we had the most PCPs, the most area, and then it was weighted within Deschutes, Klamath, Lake, and Jackson. So the commissioners didn't get a full vote. They got however they voted, it's a formula that gets, the formula is done on an Excel sheet that's that complicated to figure out how much vote you get. But nevertheless, we put forward the 5 candidates. 3 candidates went forward for the county commissioners to vote on. All 3 candidates that went forward were the Crook County candidates. And from those 3 candidates, Vicki Breeze Iverson was chosen to be our representative. So that was on us. That was totally on us. We had a huge influence. The person that got that seat was from Crook County, and Crook County had the weight and the PCPs to put those votes forward. So what we do is really important when that one time comes. When that happens, it's really important. So keep that in mind. If something happens, for instance, if something was to happen to Christine Drazen as a statewide Republican candidate, we would have a percentage of the vote moving forward on who we would want to replace her. It would be statewide, obviously, but nevertheless, the PCPs of this county would have a say going forward on who that could be and who we would want to nominate. Okay, so that talks about, so I talked about the 250 voters, 1 PCP for every 250 voters within a precinct, and it's rounded up. So if you have 210, you get 1 more. It's important to attend these meetings, the organizational meeting that'll be in November to elect your leadership. And then we choose here to have meetings twice a month, year round. We take off for Christmas and Thanksgiving sometimes, depending on how they fall, and a few other holidays or events when they fall wrong. Other counties, I was just talking to Clackamas County yesterday. They can have 1,200 PCPs in Clackamas County. She's at 360 some, and so 363 PCPs, and she holds a meeting once a quarter. One of the biggest counties in the state with the most PCPs, and she's holding meetings once a quarter. And what's coming out of Clackamas County? If anybody knows Clackamas County, it used to be a very strong logging, agriculture, Republican county. And what's happening? Not so much now. And so it's really, what we do is really important. It's really important to be talking to our neighbors. It's really important to be having those conversations because we're losing it one precinct at a time, one county at a time. And then again, I tell you all this about the whole structure in hopes that you enjoy this enough that moving forward, you would want to step into maybe a congressional or a state position, and have Crook County's voice go farther across the state. Some of this is kind of redundant. You're the liaison to the county party organization, year-round commitment. And it's kind of like, you know, here the primary's over, but we're gonna go do the stampede tomorrow night because it's community involvement. It's getting to know our neighbors. It's getting our voice out there. It's making sure people know that we're here. We're gonna do the 4th of July in the park because people need to know that we have a Republican Party. When we were cleaning the office the other day, and I walked over to Auntie's, had to ask her a question, and I walked over there and I said, yeah, I'm Jody Fleck. I'm with the Crook County Republican Party. We got the building next door. And she goes, yes, that is great. The Republicans right next door. And she was all excited. And I'm like, wow, I like my neighbor already, you know? And then when they came and got a piece of furniture out of there, they were like, yes, this is great. This is where it's at.
He said, what's going in here? And I told him, and he said, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
So more people like us than what we know if we say who we are, Ron.
I'm just gonna point out that they're immigrants from Germany, if I remember right.
Oh, really? I don't know. They were pretty excited to know that the Republican Party was next door, and they've already proven to be pretty good neighbors and loaned us their mop and so, and welcomed us. So it was a pretty great welcome. Could have gone the other direction. Thankful it didn't. And you know, it's because the good Lord's looking out for us. He opened the door for that place at a real extremely reasonable, crazy price for us. And then give us neighbors that like us. So what more could you ask for?
Which building are you in?
We are in part of the VFW
Okay.
buildings on Main Street, right across from Ochco Brew, or the Horseshoe, or across from the Horseshoe. If it gets too bad over here, you can go take it out over there. No.
So the room only can fit 30 chairs in it. Is there a limit of the number of people in that building?
Well, every building has a limit for fire purposes, but I mean, we could get 40 chairs in there, but you're gonna be elbow to elbow and it's just,
We could get in there, but we couldn't move around.
Yeah.
Did y'all come look at it? Do you want to meet there? I'll quit saying, no, I don't think so.
there's not a table in front of you, or, you know, there's not room to put tables in front of people, and yeah, I mean,
Just for an office.
it'll give us a voice. It will give us a storefront face on Main Street. It will let people know that we were there. And as soon as we get the schedule filled, we'll have an open door to continue to educate people that come to us. And then PCPs support the Republican candidates after the primary. This is really important. This is the main reason why we need to vet our candidates in the primary so that you can feel comfortable supporting them for the general. And I will tell you, I have no qualms. You guys have already heard it 100 times. To me, Newt Bueller was not a Republican candidate. He was not pro-life. There was no way I could support him in the general. I will say, in the Kate Brown, Newt Bueller governor's race, I did not mark any box. Actually, I might have wrote somebody's name in. But I did not vote for either candidate. I cannot vote for the lesser of two evils. If evil is evil, I'm not going to vote for it. We have to vet our candidates and call them out in the primary so that when they do make it forward to the general, we can all get behind them. Christine Drazen is pro-life. Is she staunch conservative down the rest of the plank? No, she votes conservative 63% of the time. But in my book, because she's not a baby killer, she cares about life. If she cares about life in its infancy, she'll care about life in its adolescence, she'll care about life in its adulthood, and she'll care about life when death is near. That's my theory. And the
Take your
rest
gun
of that,
away to protect life.
what's that?
So take your gun away to protect life.
The rest of the stuff I can fight. You can't fight the heart. If her heart is right, we can work on the rest of it. I don't think that I would, that. Anyhow. She's not evil. And we don't know how she will vote when she has the upper hand as opposed to being crunched under Tina Kotek or the Democrat Party. So I guess I'm willing to give her the benefit of the doubt, but nevertheless,
Because we know on the other.
we know on the others, we know how they are for sure. But again, that's why we vet our candidates. I wouldn't, she's not one that I would have put forward because of her record. But if we want to win, we have to get behind them. I'm not saying get behind them no matter what. I will never say that because of the new Bueller deal. But what I'm saying is if we can vet them in the primary to where we can support them in the general, we're going to have a much better chance of winning the state. Canvassing, going door to door, talking to voters. Already talked about, I can get you lists. And then help get voters registered, based on their beliefs. Have registration cards. Let me go through these others real quick. Get out the vote. That's where we call people that haven't turned their ballots back in. When the election is taking place, we get an update every single day of in your precinct who has returned their ballot. We have no idea how they voted or anything. It just, the county clerk marks them as received, and then we get that list daily. And one of the things that we can do is call those people that haven't returned their ballot and just encourage them to do so. Republicans. Participate in fundraising activities. So from time to time, we do fundraisers to keep us going, like when we sold the raffle tickets for the beef. We ask everybody to participate in that to help raise funds because we always have things that we need or candidates that we want to support. And again, be flexible. There's no magic formula. Use your best judgment and get people to vote for the most, cast for their vote for the most favorable Republican. Let each citizen remember at the moment he is offering his vote that he is executing one of the most solemn trusts in human society for which he is accountable to God and his country. And that's why I couldn't vote for Nick Bueller, because I am accountable for that vote. Okay, so we'll leave it there for tonight. And we will pick up next time on page 12. I'll get the entire manual to you. You had a question?
Yeah, ID badges.
Oh, so yeah, I had a question on that. So there was a few people that paid me for them that wanted them. And what I failed to ask is if you wanted PCP put on them, PCP and then your precinct, or if you just want your name on them. If you want them customized that way, or if you just want your name. So,
But that conversation was prior to a lot of.
oh yeah, so I have, hey, would you run grab that one up in the glass holder in the pickup? That name, name badge in the pickup, it's up in where the glass holder is, above. I'll show you where it's in with the, We have one that we've done that's kind of leather looking that Tag did for us. It has our wagon wheel on it and it's magnetic and they're $10 a piece. If somebody would want them, they're in the shape of Oregon. John will bring it in, you can take a look. That we can also go with a plastic color one if somebody would think they would rather have that. I think those were $15 a piece to go with a plastic color one. We ask that you pay for that yourself because we don't really, because then we just have to do a fundraiser to replace the money. So the fundraiser is pay for your own back. And so John will bring that one in and you guys can take a look at it. And if anybody wants one, let me know. And then I will, she's gonna do a little touch up on our wagon wheel because it's a little out of the line. So she's gonna do a little graphic touch up on it to make it look just a little better. And then there's room enough to have your name and then PCP under that with your precinct or just your name, however you would like that.
I have a question on, when you go to get the ballot or the information back as to who has turned in their ballot and who has not. If you call somebody who has not and they ask if you would mind taking it, can people do that?
In Oregon, it's allowed. We have steered away from it just because of the perception of and what's happening in other states where people are going through them, and if they know they're Republican, they're throwing them away, and if they're Democrats, they're taking them in and turning them in. So it's just important to not.
That could be perceived as ballot harvesting. So
I didn't know if that
we
might.
do our best to stay away from it.
So you drive them in your car so they can go put their ballot in the box.
Yes, and that's acceptable. The other thing is if a family member can do it, if someone's in a group home or a care center or just doesn't drive, if you have a way to help them contact a family member to take it in for them, that's also better. Anybody's seen the movie 2000 Mules, then you'll know why we want to stay away from that. Okay, yeah, Barb?
Is there anything that you, before we door to door?
Yeah, and we'll get into that when we get into more of the actual, what are we gonna do and how are we gonna do it? But yes, we have two different handouts. We have one that has some of our Republican beliefs on it, two-sided palm card. We also have one that speaks to the NAVs that says, lists what the Republicans believe and what the Democrats believe and let them think about what party they might actually belong to. And then if we are handing out candidate information at the same time, then we would have their literature if we're supporting a particular candidate and helping get the word out for them. Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much.
Okay, don't forget, tomorrow night, we're gonna have the pop-up out on 4th Street and then the July 4th pop-up down at the park. If you're interested, come sign up. And meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike and Jody. Yeah.
So I have okay. I already had you on the list. I think that's, yeah. And I think did you take, I don't remember. I have my list. Okay. I won't get. But you'll send those, you're gonna do this.
Zoom thing again.
Hey, Crook, we'll see you when we get back. Hey, enjoy your trip. We will.
Where's my trying to stop?